So we're sitting in between a bunch of trees
We are.
at Smart City Expo in Barcelona. And I think there's quite a lot of talk about greenification. How do we reduce waste, being exposed to waste in cities?
Sure.
Because the research tells us that healthier, happier, more productive people are in the environments where it's green
Yep.
and where
Oh, for
where
sure.
it's cleaner and air is better. These types of things. And cars and mobility is such an interesting part of that discussion, right?
Right.
So when you guys are at your office at Parking Around and you're talking about this awesome parking solution where in essence, I think what you guys are trying to do is make parking more efficient
Yes.
and get more out of less in a
Right.
lot of ways,
Right.
right? So what is the vision for you all in that discussion of making cities better?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. Because, I mean, you go to any large European city, and you can immediately see that there's a problem with, uh, you know, these are all cities that existed for hundreds of years before cars were here, and now suddenly everyone has at least one car. A lot of families have two cars, and these are just places that aren't meant for cars, like simply put. And it's really unfortunate to see these beautiful European cities that are so nice for walking filled up with cars on the side, cars driving through, and these beautiful buildings are trapping CO2. You can breathe it in, and it's very unpleasant. And basically, by optimizing off-street parking, which is really the main goal of parking around. At its core, the goal is to get more people into those spaces. For instance, if you're a residential building and you have a lot of your residents going to work and those spots are empty, they get to rent those out during the day. People can use them for whatever the price you choose. It's kind of like Airbnb of parking. And if you're a company with a parking lot and that's empty during the night, open it up, rent it out for specific times that you choose. And in both of those use cases, we're getting people off the streets and into those parking lots, which means we can reduce the amount of parking spaces on those streets and ultimately just reduce the number of cars that people have to
Yeah,
look at every day.
yeah,
And that means we're going to have more of these instead of those parking spaces.
yeah. Hopefully. And
Ideally,
I
yeah.
think and I think what you're so interesting about your all's strategy and
Mm.
what you guys are doing is there's a huge monetization piece to this, right?
Yes, yeah.
And it's sad to say, but money talks,
It sure
right?
does, yeah.
Money rules the world, and money
Absolutely.
rules a lot of decision making in the
Hmm.
sense of what's in it for me and how do I actually kind of make it useful. So,
For
can you
sure.
say a little bit about that monetization strategy of what you guys are doing to encourage people to be more thoughtful about these things?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll go back to that ideal use case. It's like a residential mixed-use building. We have residents who own their own private spot, but they're not using it 100% of the time. So our system will recognize when that spot's not being used. It will ask that person, hey, do you want to put this into, there's a few options. You can put it into a parking pool where anyone can reserve it. You could give it specifically to someone you want who wants to use it, or you could just like open it to either a select group or the general public to rent it, and you get to set those prices. And that's all about encouraging people to look at their parking spaces not as just a piece of property, but as a financial asset that they can actually use uh, for that purpose. And then on the ESG side of things, a lot of people focus on the E and not so much the S. But like here, it's like we're trying to create a system where in a building where you might not talk to anyone in that building, you're suddenly now sharing spaces, or your neighbors are providing a space for you. So we're able to create more communication among neighbors. We're able to let people like share their spots, which can make all the difference when you're trying to get somewhere and you don't feel like you have a place to go, right, or a place to put your car. So like there's that social element, and then on top of all of that, let's say you have a reservation and for like 3 hours and you use that spot, but you overstay. right? The system's going to recognize that you overstayed. Or another potential problem is you reserve, but you're backed up in traffic, you don't get there in time. So you're a little late for that reservation. The system will recognize that as well, and it can adjust to those things, right? So if you're someone who's constantly overstaying your reservations, the system's going to say, this is someone who doesn't respect the rules, which means in the future, if they're using a parking pool, they're going to be a lower priority in terms of getting that spot, right? Whereas if you're someone who is constantly respecting the rules, sharing spots, being very active in the system, and when I say active in the system, I don't mean that you're always on the app doing things, but just respecting whatever you agreed on, or helping out when you can, then you're going to be a higher priority. So we call this gamification, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is to encourage better behavior among drivers. So once again, back to that S, trying to make everyone a little more conscious by having them realize, like, no, like my actions do have repercussions directly on me and others, right? So to your original question about monetization, like, if someone's really misbehaving in the parking lot, like there's also the option of charging them more money. And that's ultimately, more than anything else, probably going to discourage bad behavior, right? So.
I think that's amazing. I think that the social element of building community around parking, nobody's ever thought about parking as a community
Right.
initiative, right? But it can be, and I
Yeah.
think if we actually approach our parking spaces as a community initiative to be more thoughtful about it and to be more intentional in how we use parking, we can actually replace a lot of the parking by being more efficient and replace it with trees.